So, news just broke that the Miami Heat are finalizing a deal to send Jimmy Butler to the Golden State Warriors for Andrew Wiggins, Dennis Schroeder, Kyle Anderson, and a protected first-round pick, sources tell ESPN. This right here is major news because we've all known for quite some time now that Jimmy Butler has been constantly on the trading mill right now for various reasons. It seems as if like his time with the Heat has ran its course, in large part because he was frustrated out in the Miami due to the fact that they were not willing to give him the deal that he was looking for. And so there is a lot of moving pieces that's going on right now. As I'm even reporting on it right now, it's continuing to break that Dennis Schroeder is headed to Utah and Kyle Anderson to Toronto as a part of a multi-team trade. Now, as we all know, there was a bit of a hesitation on Jimmy Butler being moved whatsoever to the Golden State Warriors because despite the fact that the Warriors were open to the opportunity of getting Jimmy Butler, he wasn't open to the opportunity of staying out in Golden State, my brothers. It was a whole bunch of back and forth and dispute about if Jimmy's going to sign long-term for the Warriors because it seemed as if like that was going to have to be mandatory for them to get this deal done. He was declining the opportunity of doing so, which really put a lot of speculation out there, which enforced the Warriors to kind of pivot to go after Kevin Durant all throughout the last 24 to about, 36 hours. It went from KD potentially being open to the opportunity and the Warriors potentially going after Durant because how desperate and thirsty they were to Durant over the last couple of hours straight out saying, no, I'm not going to the Golden State Warriors at all. Y'all got me messed up if I was going to go to the Warriors and play alongside Draymond Green. Let's be honest with ourselves. And also, I think Steve Kerr has a lot to do with that as well. So now since that happened, the Warriors had to then pivot back to other opportunities. There was conversations about Brandon Ingram. They already swung at and missed out on Zach LaVine because they pulled out on that, but there were still opportunities about Vucevic. But they kind of circled back on the idea of bringing back Jimmy Butler, and then that became the topic of discussion of where we are right now. The updated trade summary is the Golden State Warriors get Jimmy Butler, Miami Heat receive Andrew Wiggins, PJ Tucker, a first-round pick that I believe is protected. The Pistons receive Lindy Waters III, Josh Richardson, and a second-round pick. The Jazz receive Dennis Schroeder, and the Raptors receive Kyle Anderson. A bunch of mid being moved around outside of Andrew Wiggins and Jimmy Butler. Wowzer. Now, going back to the contract extension, because again, the reason why there was a hesitation and a bit of a pump fake a couple of days ago is because Jimmy Butler first was reporting that he was not going to sign a long-term deal or sign an extension with the Warriors. It seems as if like he's had a change of heart. I think a huge reason for that is because he's starting to realize he's running out of options because obviously when Kevin Durant declined the idea of being moved around, there was no way in hell that he was going to be able to be moved out of Miami to any other team unless it was going back to the Warriors. So in all honesty, we just spent the last 2 to 3 months pump faking all of this. Chris Haynes is breaking that the Golden State Warriors first round pick this year is top 10 protected, and then next year it's top 10 protected, and then it becomes unprotected in the following year if it is not conveyed. That's actually a really good pick for Miami. However, going back to the contract extension, Golden State Warriors contract extension, the star Jimmy Butler has agreed to a new 2-year, $121 million extension with the franchise through 2027. Sources tell Windhorse. Butler is declining his 2025-26 player option for the new $121 million deal. That is $60 million a year for Jimmy Butler for a 35, going on 36-year-old Jimmy Butler. $60 million a year from an organization that was just complaining about giving Klay Thompson a contract and was declining that, but yet now giving $60 million to Jimmy Butler. $60 million a year means that this brother will be paid more than Steph Curry next year. The franchise player, the face of the franchise, the individual that you have been trying to carve out all the money in the world to put something of substance next to him. $60 million down the drain, down the gutter for Jimmy Butler. Next year, $60 million for Jimmy Butler, $59.6 million for Stephen Curry, $25 million for Draymond Green, $9 million for Buddy Hield, $11 million for Moses Moody, and $2 million for Trace Jackson. This is actually functionally dumb because not only do they now have to pay $60 million for Wiggins, they still have to give GP2 a contract extension. They still have to give Kuminga a contract extension. And they're lucky because B-Pods hasn't get paid yet. But they still have to give GP2 and Kuminga a contract extension while seeing an uptick with the amount of money that is committed to this roster next year. That's crazy. That's insanity. They more than doubled the amount of money they're going to pay at that position. More than doubled. Now, we can talk a little bit of basketball for a second, because what exactly does this mean for the Warriors? Well, it obviously is an upgrade of talent. At the forward position, where I do believe Butler's going to play, he's going to give you a lot of the same value that Wiggins was providing in terms of defense ability, but a way better shot creator, way better ball handler, passer, playmaker, somebody who's also going to be aggressive at the basket, higher competitor as well. And if we're going to be honest with ourselves, it's an overall upgrade, and the ceiling does increase for the Warriors. So if it's just the idea of adding talent to this team, congratulations. The Warriors did. The Warriors, they were able to add talent to this team. They were able to go after somebody that provided a second scoring option next to Curry. They were able to address their immediate concerns. But at what cost? Well, we know the cost is $60 million. But what does this mean moving forward for the rest of the roster? I'm going to go as far as to say, Kuminga, they're probably going to sign and trade him during the offseason. I just don't see how on this roster he makes any sense. It's going to make more sense for him to get signed and trade. Right now, it's hard to move him because he's only making $7 million, but he's going to receive a contract extension. That right there will bring in a lot of talent to kind of fill out the rest of the roster, because the roster is thin beyond this season. But right now, you have Curry at the point guard, GP2 at the 2, Butler at the 3, Draymond at the 4, and Trace Jackson-Davis at the 5. It's an improvement. I'm not going to act like it's not an improvement. They did exactly what they needed to do. It does concern me about the lack of three-point shooting now. Anyone not named Curry doesn't really provide them at all whatsoever, and they've now been able to address that. This also kind of addresses some of the ball handling duties as well. Curry's been struggling with that. You know, you got a gamer, you got a doll, you got an alpha, and Jimmy Butler's going to step in and do what needs to be done. I don't believe there's going to be any problems with Jimmy Butler and Draymond Green. I think both of those guys, no nonsense type of guys. I think they're going to come to each other with a lot of respect, because both of them have done a lot of damage to their career over the last 48 hours, quite frankly, with Jimmy Butler playing around talking about, I'm accepted and not accepted, accepted and not accepted, and then news breaking that Kevin Durant potentially would have been on the table if it wasn't for the fact that Draymond ran rampant over there in Golden State over the past couple of years, and it seems as if like their relationship has not been really and fully rekindled, despite the fact of the public optics. He's just refusing to go back over there. So you miss out on the opportunity because of Draymond, and then Jimmy Butler over the past couple of just really months now has just been playing around with so many other franchises, and we now get to this point where, you know, they look like a team that's going in the right direction, but it's still nowhere fast. At the end of the day, a team that features Curry, Jimmy, and Draymond as a big three, it's a compelling one, but it makes it even more interesting with the rest of the roster, right? Because as good as those three are, and I think they're going to be really, really good, it's not enough to move the needle when the rest of your supporting cast is made up of Gary Payton II, Buddy Hield, Jonathan Kuminga, B-Pods, and Trace Jackson-Davis. Like, that's not enough of a roster to me to really feel really, really high on who the Warriors are. Again, an upgrade, but one that's not crazy. Now, moving on to the Miami side. Miami was backed into a corner. They had very little options because Golden State, in all honesty, and we've been saying this for months now, Golden State was really the only team that was desperate enough to make this move. And the writing was on the wall for quite some time. And if the Warriors, who, again, change of events, 2 months ago when we started talking about this, the Warriors were steadfast on the idea of not trading anyone, not moving any young pieces, not making significant alterations to their roster, not compromising their future for what is currently constructed now, and certainly not making any steep financial commitments just for marginal improvements to the roster. They changed their mind because how desperate they end up getting, and they effectively became more desperate than Miami. So Miami found themselves in a situation where Jimmy was acting a plumb fool, going crazy, telling teams not to trade for him because he wasn't going to sign, walking out of practice, being all frustrated, and it got so disturbing to what the team was trying to achieve that they told him to go home. We'll be fine without you until we figure out things going on. To me, that is waving the white flag. You have lost all leverage. But for them to come out of this trade with a first-round pick alongside Andrew Wiggins, to me, speaks volumes. It speaks volumes because I'm going to be honest with you, that's a W. So far this season, this is what you was getting. And I'm not saying, again, I know that Wiggins is a worse player than Jimmy Butler, but right now you're a 500 ball club in the 6th seed, and this is what you are receiving with Jimmy Butler so far this season. Only 25 games, 17 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, shooting 54% from the field, but only attempting one three-pointer a game, shooting 36%. You're going to get the same level defender, if not better, a better three-point shooter because of the volume, and you're cutting the price point and how much money you're spending at that position. That's what you're doing. And you're doing that while retaining all your other core pieces. So because Wiggins still have, I believe, 2 more years left on his deal, next year, instead of paying $52 million to Jimmy, you're now only paying $28 million to Wiggins. So that does cut how much money you're pushing out next year. But more importantly, heading into the 2027 season, you're still going to have a fairly reasonably aged Wiggins with Bam and Hero still in their 20s as well. That is a quality core 3. Now, where that's going, nowhere. It's going absolutely nowhere. But I do believe flexibility is probably the most important thing for the Heat right now, because it seems as if, like, sooner than later, they're probably going to be moving in a direction where they're going to have to make a lot of decisions on what their roster is going to look like. I mean, that and the flexibility, movable contracts, pieces and players that people are going to want, I think that's way more valuable. Things are probably not going to work out in the best of favor for Miami in terms of what the team is going to look like in terms of playoff success, but in terms of acquiring an asset while receiving a draft pick in the process as well, that can then be moved later on down the timeline, because Wiggins is going to be able to be moved later on down the timeline for something else. I think that right there should have been a main objective. And so you basically got a pick in the process, got another player that can be traded down the line for another pick as well if you decide to blow it up and go in a different direction. Now, with that being said, I will end on this note. What exactly does this mean for the Warriors in their postseason appearance this year? Couple things. A, this is the reason why I love Anthony Davis, I love Max, as many of you all know, but this is the reason why I wasn't that high on the idea of, like, oh my goodness, the Mavericks, they're going to make a deep postseason run, because for those who don't know, the Mavericks are the 11th seed. And after this trade, that's another team that's now improved. Another team that's improved, that's in front of them in the standings. And so there's a lot of ground that the Mavericks are going to have to make up if they really want to make the postseason appearance that everyone decided to sell the masses over the past couple of days. But speaking of postseason performance, let's be honest with ourselves. Those numbers that I just spat out for Jimmy Butler, does anybody in the chat believe that that's really who Jimmy Butler is as a player? I'll answer for you. No. Everyone knows that that's not Jimmy Butler. That's not really Jimmy Butler. Especially on a team where he's going to have another shot creator in Steph Curry, a high IQ passer and playmaker who's also a great defender in Draymond. A lot of the sets and how they play easily transferable for what he was doing in Miami to now here in Golden State. And I do believe if this Warriors team can make the playoffs, we're going to a whole nother level in the type of performance that we're seeing from Jimmy Butler. Now, does that mean that I think that the Warriors are going to make a deep postseason run? No, I don't. But I do believe, you can keep a lot of things open when you have someone like Jimmy Butler on your roster, and we know what he can look like when he turns things up and who he has been so far this season, especially over the last 5 to 7 games playing for Miami before this trade went through. He definitely ain't. That wasn't who he was as a player. We know that's not who he was. And we had to keep all that in mind, and also keep in mind that as we continue to go down this timeline of what the Warriors are trying to do, obviously they're trying to maximize what they look like for the remainder part of Curry's career, and they made a lot of mistakes along the way, and I still don't think I don't think this is the best way to go about it. They had so many other opportunities to make so many better decisions down the line. But for a team that was on a run, that was swinging and missing every single time they stepped into the plate, this has to be the only answer that you can kind of fall on. I still don't think the Warriors have the capability of making a deep postseason run. I don't think so at all. But I do believe the Warriors have the ability to cement themselves as a playoff team.